I've come out today to the wonderful northeast of England. I'm currently stood in a forest, I'll come on to that later, to talk to you today about this camera here, the Yashica Mat 124G. This is my first medium format camera. This isn't the first time I've used medium format. I've used Hasselblad 500 CMs in the past. I've used even digital medium format systems like the Phase 1 system, for example. So I do have experience with the format, but I've never had the opportunity to sort of own it, as it were. And I've got to say, I've absolutely loved using this camera. I think it's a cracking bit of kit for the price. I think if you're looking to step into medium format, I think this is a really good starting point. And I'll come on to my reasons behind why I think that is the case. So I guess the biggest reason is probably the price. If you're looking at something like a Rolleiflex, you can be looking at quite a large sum of money, whereas this is a Japanese sort of version of it made by Yashica, which is obviously a bit of a household name when it comes to film cameras, but regardless, this is considerably cheaper than a Rolleiflex. And you know, there are some things that you sacrifice with that, like a little bit of build quality, for example, but I think if you're looking to get into medium format film photography, then this really isn't a bad shout. So I picked up this copy for about £200 on eBay. That price definitely varies depending on the condition that your camera is in, whether or not it's, you know, this one's pretty good condition. It's a little bit scuffed around the edges, especially on the winding wheel and sort of all the corners, but apart from that, physically, technically, mechanically, it's all working very, very nicely and as you would expect. So you're looking at around £200. I'd probably, if you've got an extra bit of cash, just play it safe and just sort of invest a little bit more money. Then you've got total peace of mind about this bit of kit. The process of taking a picture with this camera is so different to anything else I've ever used, but it is enjoyable, it is good fun, and it does definitely slow me down. That being said, I'm pretty terrible at using this camera, so I'm sure with time and practice, my speed will pick up. So I have used this camera for street photography, just a little bit sort of wandering around, a little bit sort of more environmental street photography, not necessarily focusing on the sort of the action scenes that I quite like doing with street photography and getting in people's grill and all of that jazz. That's not what this camera, it's not what I've used this camera for anyway. The main thing being focusing, composing, it's tricky. It is tricky, especially with a TLR. So with a TLR, you have two lenses. It stands for twin lens reflex. You have your focusing and composing lens, which is this one here, and then you have your mechanical lens, which is where your aperture and your shutter mechanism is. So composing with this, everything is mirrored. So if I turn this way, it's, you know, everything's backwards, which is, again, another element that leads you to slow down a little bit. And everything takes a little bit more time, from winding the film to taking a light meter reading, all of these things. Then there's the format. It's a square format camera. Like I said, I've used Hasselblad 500 systems in the past. They are also a square format. With something like a 4x5 camera, I think it can lend itself to certain situations, and I think it actually makes composing portraits easier in a 4x5 frame, which is when it comes to 1x1 frames, you've got to really think about how you go about composing. It's a little bit of a different system than most people are used to. And again, I think if you're going into the world of medium format photography, you might as well kill two birds with one stone and sort of enhance your composition skills with a square format, because everything looks different in square. Once you actually compose things in a square format, it's very satisfying. I think there's something very sort of, I don't know, linear about shooting in a 1x1. I just think everything can fall into place, and I do think it trains you to think in a slightly different way when composing. So in terms of using this camera, it's quite straightforward. Like I said, it's all very sort of intuitive, how you would imagine it would work. You've got your winder on the side, you've got your focusing on the front here, and as you focus, the bellows move in and out. You've got your viewfinder here with your ground glass, and then you've got a little pop-up here, and then all you do is just twist that on the side, and then you can start focusing, which is very, very fun to do in this camera. Like I said, it's a whole different way of looking at sort of taking imagery, especially when you've got it down by your waist. That's also very, very fun. You're adjusting your exposure values on the front, so you've got shutter speed and your aperture. Again, it's all very sort of compact, very straightforward, and it just works very nicely. So in terms of ease of use, loading it's very straightforward as well. I would say that's probably one of the easier film cameras that I've used for loading, and I think that's just because of the amount of space you have, because this whole thing opens up, and then you can just load in the film relatively easily. In terms of the light meter on the front, this camera does have a built-in light meter, by the way. I haven't used it yet. I don't know how to use it properly. I don't know how it meters necessarily, if it's spot metering, if it's matrix metering. So I've just been using a digital meter on my phone, which has worked very well so far. I have had no issues with that. It always seems to be pretty spot on. So coming on to why I'm standing in a forest, it is a bit weird to just be standing in a forest on your own. My brother is behind the camera, so I'm not entirely on my own. But this is where I like to use this camera. I have found myself transitioning away from street photography necessarily when shooting with this camera. And I just feel like landscapes, environments, like portraits, sort of, you know, lifestyle, everyday moments really lend itself to this sort of medium. There's some incredible street photography done with medium format cameras, like Vivian Mayer, for example, used a Rolleiflex camera. She used a TLR camera, and her images are incredible. I'm not quite there yet. So what I've found is slowing down, being in a slower environment, focusing on details is a really good sort of stepping stone into this medium. But when you're in an environment like this, you know, when you're sort of out and about, you're just walking, you're just enjoying being out, having a camera like this, having a medium like this is just really, really nice. In terms of film stocks that I've been using, I've used Lomo 400 and HP5. I think I'm leaning towards exclusively using HP5 in this camera, mainly because it's quite a low contrast black and white, and you can add in contrast in post if you want to. I think it's just quite a safe bet, and it's cheap. In the world of film at the moment, HP5 is cheap, which is good news. So HP5 seems to be the winner, and black and white medium format, just, you know, everything just sort of is coming together quite nicely. So I think I'll leave the end of this video just with some images that I've shot with this camera. These are not award-winning images. These are me trying to get to grips with this camera. Just a few rolls that I've put through. I think I've put about 6 or 7 rolls through this camera so far, with black and white and colour film. So yeah, take it with a pinch of salt. be kind in the comments, because like I said, I'm pretty terrible at using this camera, I'm not gonna lie. It's definitely a steep learning curve, but nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed the imagery. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a comment if you have. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more. Follow me on Instagram, all of that jazz. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.